Hello and welcome to the show. I am here on GTA 5 for some more downhill chaos today, looking at some of the, well, kind of secret cars that were added in the last DLC. The code for them was added into the game, but you couldn't unlock them, but thanks to the power of mods, well, I can have a go with them. So we're going to start with the Pfister 811, essentially a Porsche 918. You've got the exhausts at the back, although you can change the exhaust if you don't want them up there kind of burning the rear wing. A little bit of a strange place for the wing and exhaust combo, but never mind. This first run down at Mount Chiliad, things got quite iffy early on. I just bounced it off a rock, and, well, when it's so narrow down this section, there is not really a huge amount that you can do. Amazingly, I got away with it that time, but was carrying so much speed that I ended up in the fence and the bushes. Those fencing and that kind of grey bush there are horrendous things. I hate having to deal with them, but yeah, well, not a particularly good place to end up. Also, may have had some issues getting around the hairpin on the first attempt there. I turned it in a little bit too soon and then had some trouble, and when I thought I was around the corner far enough, I booted it and, well, we got dragged wide. Next time down, I carried a bit too much speed across the jump. This is a fast accelerating car, and that was a bit too much speed. Couldn't quite get it stopped in time. We didn't go all the way soaring off the mountain, but there we go. Now, despite it being four-wheel drive, it is still quite tail-happy. At times, relatively easy to get things wrong, lose the back end. The rocks were back to being a pain, really. It's one of these things often with the supercars, as you're trying to take more and more speed with the vehicle through sections. You get a few millimetres the wrong side of the road, you'll clip a rock and you go soaring down the mountain. So that was very much it over for that particular run. This time, almost getting the car slowed down. It wasn't quite as big a jump, but I had more troubles slowing the vehicle down, and now we're off tumbling down the mountain. If I could get all of the wheels on the ground, the car was pretty good. It had very, very good brakes, but yeah, when it's in the air, there's not very much that you can do. So it did take a few attempts to get the hang of this car. Yeah, I mean, on the whole, it wasn't too bad. This opening section is always tricky, and definitely wanting to be a little bit careful across that bump, not wanting to end up in the fences, which is why you'll often see me being a little bit slower down that section. A solid supercar to drive, really, down Mount Chiliad. It certainly didn't have too many problems with the bumps of the course. The odd mistake from me, really, just not quite getting the braking sorted into various corners. I was slightly worried it was going to start raining halfway down this run. It did get very, very ominously dark as we are around this next corner. Very bumpy down that section, and that can be a place that oversteery cars have issues, though I didn't spin this at any point at that particular section. Jumping over, I think, a hiker may have scraped them on their way down, not actually sure, as we come out of the doom and gloom of Mount Chiliad down towards the final of the jumps. No problems there for the 811. Now the final high-speed wiggle, making sure to keep the car out of the bushes, as we've been having a few issues. Not the worst car, no, but certainly not something you wanted to be doing too often. A little bit of oversteer around the second to last corner, on the excellent second to last corner, but nothing major, and it is across the line for the vehicle. We do slightly smack into it. I try to do my best to avoid hitting the trees and cross the line, but can't always get the car lined up as neatly as I want to. After all, trying to carry as much speed around that final turn as I can. I love how the mountain bikers are really not paying any attention to the supercar that just came flying past. Up next, we have got the 770, a cross between the Ferrari F12 and, I believe, an Aston Martin 177. It took me a while to figure out what it was. Like, the front is very much an F12. It took me a while. It really bugged me. I couldn't quite figure out what it is, but I think it is a 177 that would be in this vehicle. It has a rather mighty wing. Not a huge amount in the way of customization options on this vehicle, but there is a really mighty wing on the back of it, so naturally I want to use that one. Again, I mean, this opening section is fast and it is narrow. The car getting bounced from side to side a little bit, but in the end, oh, it ran so close to the edge. I did get away with that, but pushing my luck around the hairpin, I couldn't quite carry the speed that I wanted to, and turned in too soon, and that put me in all sorts of trouble. I got a big twitch in the braking zone of this next corner. Now, many a crash has happened. That might actually be one of the most common places to have an accident Normally it's from outbraking myself. It's not normally from getting a twitch. And that was a pretty spectacular cartwheels from the 770 down there. It's just there's a little bit. It almost did it again on this next run. I didn't notice that. Yeah, it got in trouble. It wasn't the twitch though that would send it off this time. I just didn't slow the car down enough. Ended up running along the banking and almost kept the car on the course. Not quite. We would go tumbling over the edge, but despite being a almost sheer vertical rock face, the car would get stopped. And amazingly, the handbrake would actually hold it up there. We get a little bit further down the run, but another slight oversteer moment. I was carrying too much speed at an inopportune moment, ending up out of place. I thought I might have recovered it back onto the road, no problem, but that was not to be the case. I didn't realise there was kind of a slight hill behind, or hidden behind the bushes, and that ended up in a big roll for the 770 back to the start of the course, and up here could cause problems, especially for this car. Of all the vehicles I have driven down Mount Chiliad, this had some of the most issues with the bushes. For whatever reason, you just grazed them and you lost so much speed. And at that point, I was always wanting to redo the run. I got away with running along the cliff faces that time, only to be immediately punished by some oversteer. And, well, you know, the car's fine, actually bump into the wall, you know, the run is still gone. This was a rear-wheel drive sports car, but the oversteer wasn't too bad. You just had to watch it on the bumps. It took a little bit of time to get the hang of this vehicle as well. It was kind of just niggly mistakes from me more than anything. There wasn't any kind of giant problems with the car. You know, it wasn't horrendously oversteery or, you know, hated the bumps and so on. Just little mistakes from me that meant it took a little while to drive it down here. Sometimes that just happens with vehicles. You just make little niggly mistakes with the car. So yeah, it was. It might have been out of all of these vehicles the one that took the longest to get down to today. As we head towards the first of the big jumps, no real problems with the 770, and it could carry, you know, maintain some decent speed. You did have to be aware of the bumps through that section. I was worried about getting the Coyotes caught underneath the wheels, but made it through no problem. Again, you know, these are very hefty jumps. The replay, or the camera from this angle doesn't quite do them justice, just how steep these jumps are. So it's a fairly big landing for the car. We get it all sorts of out of shape on the next one somehow. I'm still not quite sure how. Got it all back under control. Really had to be careful of the bushes. Certainly is a bit of a pain down there, making sure you can't get away with anything in this car, because it will just lose you all of your speed as we round the final corner and we throw the car across the line. Yeah, I don't know what it is about this vehicle. Now, some mod cars have had big issues with the bushes. I just figured it was the way that they were coded and whatnot. But yeah, this one, it did not like going through the bushes. So you really, really had to keep as far away from them as possible. Aside from that, though, yeah, didn't have any massive issues down Chiliad. Finally, we have the craziest car of them all, the X80 Proto. It is, I don't even know what it is, to be honest. It looks like one of the Vision GT cars. That's about the the best kind of comparison that I have for it. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. I do quite like it. Again, with a mighty rear wing. This thing, phenomenally fast accelerating, very, very good brakes and fantastic turning when it is on tarmac. However, things go a little bit wrong on this opening run, and having ended up out wide at turn 1, I couldn't really bring everything back together again, and we would end up a fair way down the mountain. Also, we've kind of got the giant wing is above another separate wing that acts as an air brake in the middle. You can kind of see it moving and twisting around. The next run, the police decided to get involved. I don't quite know why I had a wanted rating. This time the police were actually going for me. I don't quite know where I got a wanted rating from, because I hadn't actually hit a hike yet at this stage. So, yeah, the police were apparently angry at me throwing a car down Chiliad. Who knows? The next run, I get slightly out of shape, and I'm just bouncing from side to side off rock, and then I'm twisting in the air, and that's not a particularly good angle to be going at, and the Proto would be off the mountain, although those incredibly powerful brakes would get the car stopped, running it very risky on the outside wall there. However, in the next corner, pushing my luck a bit too much trying to carry that speed, just clip the rock pile, and that would launch the car around. And so normally you roll off that rock pile or get stopped dead. Not very often it gets spun full 360. Towards the end of the run, far too much speed. I thought I could be brave and get away with a bit more in this car because of the levels of grip, but yeah, well, that was too much. Now, that was too much bravery down that section, and yeah, would end up pointing the wrong way. Hikers were, well, they were being backed suitably cursed. Clipped one of them and lifted the front of the car up. Not a particularly good time. Still trying to avoid the bushes. I was far too far to the right that time out and would go soaring off the mountain in an unusual place, actually. Don't normally go down this part of the course, although it is lovely and open. Plenty of time to get this car under control and get it stopped again. This time not running too wide, although it was pushing my luck quite a lot. I think I might have found an unusual bump because I wasn't actually, that fast and, that late on the brakes, but the car just got tipped in a slightly peculiar manner, and that sent it off the course once more. Again, once it does fall off the mountain, provided it's not rolling, the brakes are so powerful it doesn't have a problem getting slowed down, but yeah, it will ruin a run. A big bounce on the landing would see the Proto tipped about. I got it under control, although I couldn't quite feed it through this final section. Unlike with the 770, I couldn't quite get it all lined up and neatly, and would end up losing control. May have just corrected a bit too much. As there is tremendous levels of grip in this car, in the motorbikes it's normally the easiest one to kind of overcorrect, but you could do it with this vehicle if you weren't too careful, and that would of course cause some problems. And out of the second to last corner, well, I tried to get on the power, and once it sort of started sliding, I thought I might be able to get away with just keeping the full accelerator down, but it didn't quite work. It wasn't going to happen there. Yeah, it took a little bit of time. Mostly kind of getting used to the speed that you could get away with in this car. Because, yeah, it's a very, very quick accelerator vehicle. It's up towards the 80 mile an hour mark. It's only 10 miles an hour down on a Formula 1 car at that part of the track. Great acceleration, but I think perhaps a little bit too low. And let's face it, that's not exactly surprising when it comes to this sort of prototype crazy hypercar going down a incredibly bumpy off-road course. At times it just doesn't feel particularly comfortable tackling this sort of surface. It kind of bangs and crashes its way around. There are a few places where you have to be perhaps a little bit more cautious than you would ideally like to. A couple of bits where you've got to really make sure you've got the car slowed down and have got through the corners, especially up here. You can't afford to go out wide. The bumps will cause some issues. Making sure to slow it down for the heavy impact. It was a relatively heavy impact on the ground. Now it is to this relatively high speed, as high speed sections as really get on chiliad. Once more, wary of the bushes, but certainly not as bad as the previous car. Get chucked around no end by that second to last corner, and again it's a little bit out wide from the final turn as well as the Proto flies across the line. And this time I've managed to line it up neat enough to avoid smacking into a tree. An absolutely bonkers car, and I have no doubt when it comes to a GTA Online it'll be horrendously expensive. A fantastically cool looking vehicle, and on the roads it is a great car to drive. Again, mountain bikers not caring about it. On chiliad though, a little bit too low. A little bit too low for this course. On to the times, and the Proto is the fastest of today's vehicles. 122.5, although it is not the most incredible of times, shall we say. It's the same time as the Valira. It's a second down on the Brawler. Yes, it is on an actual circuit. I have no doubt it would muller all of these vehicles, but it's can't quite deal with the demands of chiliad. Still a fast time, don't get me wrong, but unsurprisingly, perhaps the crazy hypercar not so good when it comes to off-roading. The Pfister 811 goes into a 36th place with a 123.0. It does beat the off-road mod for the Rancher. It beats Dodge Viper, Toyota FT1. Does lose out to the Batmobile and the Radical and the 208 T16. The 770 not that far behind, a 123.7. Does lose out to that Toyota, but does beat the Ferrari Formula 1 car and the Holden Monaro. Yeah, all of the vehicles were relatively fast. Actually, the 770 did pretty well for what it was. I thought that might be a little bit slower. I'd hoped that the Proto might go a bit faster, but in the end, yeah, it just can't quite deal with some of the bumps, especially towards the end of the course. I think that's where the Proto loses its time. However, that is going to be it for this episode. As ever, I will link all of the mods in the description so you can download them, have a go with them yourself. It is also going to be the end of GTA 5 Downhill Chaos for now. I may come back to it with any future DLCs and so on, or if anything in particular mod-wise comes out that I really want to take down chiliad. However, I am going to end this this series here. It's been very good fun. A huge number of cars have gone down. I'll put the full leaderboard in the description of all the cars. I think it's 150 odds vehicle, over 150 have gone down, so that will be in the description if you want to have a look at the completed table. I'm going to be moving on to a slightly different racing series. I think probably the best way of you'll see next week what I've got planned. However, that is it from me. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.